Hello, welcome back to another Onkruid video, welcome back to another unedited Soulstone Survivors video. I believe this is episode 17 if I'm not mistaken, that's definitely correct in my mind. Headed over to the Frozen Wastelands, Curse level 3, and we're playing with the Barbarian again to make sure that we get him up to Prestige level 30, unlock a new little rune. To unlock all the runes and really complete everything in this game like I set out to do, I feel like we're gonna need to be playing a lot more actually. And potentially getting into the endless modes a bit more, because if you don't know, I think the next set of unlocks for characters for like prestige levels is at level 60. So I will need to get up to level 60 with all of these characters, I think, to unlock all the runes actually. Still quite the challenge ahead of us, but not a challenge that seems unfaceable, that seems unachievable. Powerful strikes at the start is pretty nice, just a raw damage upgrade will help us out at the start. And I guess I'm gonna move into the corner a little bit. The type of build we're gonna go for today is definitely very similar to the build we went for yesterday. And with yesterday, I mean the recording of yesterday, because I believe this video is gonna be for Monday, so that yesterday is actually gonna be Friday. Friday, blah blah blah, Friday. Shout out to my girl Rebecca Black, of course. You gotta respect your elders, respect your ancestors, respect your predecessors. Respect the people that paved the way for you, the way you are walking on now, you know? Pardon me? Let's see. Let's go for a little bit of a critical build if we can. We just want raw damage, and we want frontal projectiles or physical stuff. We want things that we can aim, things with a small area but a high damage output. That's exactly what we're looking for. I guess physical it is. Goddamn. Is there anything physical here? Chaos Bolt is physical. Shadow Bolt is also physical. I guess we're going... Oh, Vicious Strikes. We're going very similar to the previous build now, but I don't mind at all. Applying Doom also applies there, so multicast. We definitely want to invest in multicast because of all the small area skills we have. We're not going to invest in area, but we still want to cover a large area of the screen, and multicast helps us with that. It's a Wednesday today. Looking for something physical. Body Slam is definitely physical, based on maximum health. Bomb Barrage is also physical though. Let's go for Body Slam. And we can go for some health upgrades now, I guess. Make ourselves a bit defensive, but also offensive. What does it mean that it's a Wednesday? It means that, well, for this specific week, because it's alternating every week, it means that I have a very long work day ahead of me. We have our team meeting later today in the evening. Armor power is not something we can use right now, but maximum health is going to increase our body slam. Physical, both are physical. Yeah, sure, I'll go for a cluster bomb. I think that deals quite a lot of damage, and I think it will benefit from our multicast as well. Our FPS will definitely not benefit from the multicast though. What happens in the team meetings at work? Well, new cases get assigned to people. A lot of guidance trajectories, or well, people that are just in treatment, they get checked up on, see if everything is still going great. Cases can be discussed if somebody is stuck with a person, or if somebody is hesitant on introducing something new in the sessions or something like that, for example. They can be discussed. One of the colleagues always also gets the opportunity to kind of present some of his or her knowledge if he or she wants to do that. A couple of weeks ago, person at our workspace, for example, told us all about EMDR, eye movement, desensitization and reprocessing. I think that's what that abbreviation stands for. We made quick work of the bosses, by the way. Scent of Blood, that's the new one. Let's just try it, right? Oh, we need to replace something though. You know what? Shadow Bolt, you're out of here. We have the Scent of Blood now, which will hopefully increase our cast frequency by a mile if we actually are able to hit some bleed on enemies, because for now I feel like we are just one-shotting everything because of the vicious strikes. But yeah, EMDR in children, very interesting. If you don't know about EMDR, the abbreviation I just elongated for you, I just spelled out. It's a form of therapy mainly focused on the processing of traumatic experiences. Traumatic experiences can lead to post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, probably something all of you have heard of. And that is most of the time something that happens when people don't know how to cope well with the traumatic experiences, and therefore they use things like avoidance and stuff, for example. Sure, we can go for a Leviathan. And avoidance is not great because it makes it so that you don't get the exposure you need towards the traumatic experiences to kind of help diminish their heroic strike is something I would have really liked earlier, but now I feel like our build is already a bit locked in. And with EMDR, what you basically do is you have them recount their traumatic experiences in very high detail, so very detailed, very much into the details, into the small little nooks and crannies of what happened to you or what you experienced, and then you move your fingers in front of their eyes like this, and you tell them to follow your finger movements. Area modifier of lasting. We don't want area of bloodlust and scent of blood because we're hitting it only on ourselves. We don't have any allies, so it doesn't matter what the area is. And that helps people, we shouldn't have taken area upgrade there probably, that helps people to kind of reprocess it in a sense that their working memory is overloaded because they are following the fingers, they are doing the eye movements. And that, pardon me, that makes it so that they don't have the mental capacities left anymore to restore the traumatic experience into their mind in the traumatic fashion, if that makes any sense. It's quite a controversial technique. It was taught up by Shapiro. I don't know her first name. I know that it's a woman, but I don't know her first name. And she actually published her first work on EMDR after just her own experience. It was either her own experience or it was the experience with like one single client. Either way, it wasn't based on that much renowned and esteemed scientific work, scientific research. It was just like very limited amount of cases, and she thought she saw benefits, and she was like, yo, this is a new technique I invented for traumatic experiences and helping them process those. Luckily though, afterwards, when all the scientific research into the technique was done, it actually appeared to be quite an effective technique and quite a beneficial technique. So in the end, it all worked out fine, but it's definitely something dangerous. Those hypes in healthcare, you need to watch out for it. It's an interesting technique, but it's still to this day quite controversial because people still, sure, I'll go for a bit of an area upgrade there. People still don't really know. People still don't really actually know what the kind of working ingredient is in EMDR therapy. They are not sure whether the eye movements are the actual catalyst of therapeutic change or whether it is embedded in some other part of the procedure, the actual change motor. And that's a very interesting thing to think about, because for example, there is another type of therapy called imaginary exposure. I had to think of the name there for a second, which is basically the same as EMDR, but then without the finger movements, so without the eye movements. They just have to recount their traumatic experiences. I shouldn't have taken that block power. They have to recount their traumatic experiences in high detail, with high intensity, really bringing back all the feelings, the smells, the tastes, all the sensory information to make it alive in the moment. And that is also still effective without them having to follow the eye, without them having to move their eyes around to overload their working memory. And some people then say that, well, the exposure is just the working element and we only need the exposure to actually have an effective therapy. But then there's other research that says, well, but look at this, if we combine the exposure with math exercises, so they need to solve math problems instead of following things with their eyes, which also of course overloads their working memory for a while, that also gives beneficial effects. So maybe it is in fact the working memory overload that is actually the beneficial effect, but it doesn't necessarily have to be achieved through eye movements. There's a whole bunch of different theories on what now actually makes EMDR efficient and beneficial for people, but they're definitely not out of the woods yet. They definitely are not sure about those things yet. A lot of research still has to be done, and that's something you sometimes forget as a psychology student or as a clinical psychologist already in my case, that we are still in like our child shoes, I think the expression goes. the science of psychology is young in the grand scheme of things. We are still discovering all the little intricacies and all the little, even some large paradigms and large factors that we should really know about are still only just getting discovered today. An example I know, for example, the relation of memory and depressive symptoms or depressive disorders is something that still has been the subject of a lot of research up until this day, even though it seems to be such an important factor in both keeping the depression there, so elongating the depression, continuing the depression, but also making it come to pass. The existence of depression, kind of the start of depression, is also kind of caused by some memory effects, and it's things that really are so important, and we still only know, we don't even know the half of it yet. And I guess that opens up a lot of doors for future breakthroughs, future research. If you want to win a Nobel Prize in your life, definitely get into the field of psychology, because they are just for the taking here. It's so easy, which is a bit of an oversimplification for comedic effect, of course. I think getting a Nobel Prize is probably one of the most difficult to achieve feats in medicine and in science, for that matter, or in the world, just because there's always also the Nobel Peace Prize, the Nobel Prize for Literature, stuff like that. Maybe something you should look into is the Ig Nobel Prizes. Those are the Nobel Prizes, but then for like crazy research, for absolutely bonkers research and just weird things, but interesting things. I listened to a podcast about it, or well, a podcast where it was a subject for a while, Nerdland by Lieven Scheire, a Belgian scientist, and they talked about it as well. And one of the research was, for example, for the Ig Nobel Prize of History, and it was studying, I think, either Aztec or Mayan pottery, but I think it was Mayan pottery, and they looked at, well, sometimes people for medical reasons kind of bring alcohol into their body in unfamiliar ways, in unprecedented ways, if you will, through their anus, through their anal cavity. They insert alcohol into their ass, and they knew that that was sometimes done for medical reasons, to cure infections and stuff probably, but in some way, shape or form, in some manner, they looked at ancient pottery and they discovered that the Mayans also just did it for fun, did it on a Friday night when the weekend was about to start. Pre-drinks before they headed out to the offering club, they just injected a shot of vodka straight into their a-hole. And that is very cool. The Ig Nobel Prize for Biology is also something I remember, and it was about a breed of scorpions that explode their own behind. They make their own behind, their own buttocks, their own ass explode as a defense mechanism. Just like boom, and then they lose a part of their body. And the scientists studied whether that kind of impeded their chances with the ladies, if that eliminated their chances of producing a lot of offspring, and therefore if it was actually evolutionary a bit detrimental for them. Because if you don't know about selection, survival of the fittest rather, and natural selection, things that help us survive get passed on through generations. And maybe their theory was that blowing up their asshole of the scorpions made them so constipated that they were actually not able to run fast anymore, and therefore were not able to get to their female counterparts in their species and actually reproduce. Interesting stuff. Skill affinity slam, because we reached level 30 prestige with the barbarian. Beautiful, right on the spot. And it was quite an efficient run at that. We really have found a success formula here to make quick progress. Alright, well, 3 stars, 3 stars, 3 stars. No stars, and also no bitches. I think we know what that means. Next episode, the Spellblade. The Spellblade, and we are looking at, I think, the final map for Curse Level 3, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, the Dungeon of Despair, which is also the dungeon in my house, right here where I live in, where all my child laborers and Russian prostitutes are held hostage in chains. Don't alert the police. Thank you very much for watching. It's satire. It's satire. It's not true. Bye-bye.